So I'm hoping that we have a seminar, and I was thinking about 3, because I felt that's what the traffic would bear, three times at the auditorium here, which is about a 200-seat house. So in an effort to condense a rather awfully large subject, I thought, and along with when I first started talking to Mary and Linda, we started talking about the 50s and 60s as the sort of the golden age of a lot of creation. It seemed to be a very fertile period.
Well, I think
point.
the late 40s, earlier
40s,
are
yes,
better.
agree.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed, certainly.
Could I ask one question?
Yeah.
Because we're exploring basing the lectures on the development, etc. What lectures?
Well, it would be in other words, it would be a seminar. It would be a panel.
Not a lecture, though.
No,
Okay, so it's
no, it's more like personal experience.
but it's not like an
No.
audience and a dais and people.
No,
It's
it would
not a
be
lecture, though.
more like what we're doing, but with a moderator and with topics.
I see.
At least that's what I thought in order to
I'm
keep
just
us on
trying to
track.
understand the word lectures. It's an
Maybe
event, whatever it's called. It's not a formal lecture.
No.
It's what we're going to be doing.
Right,
Okay.
right. Because a formal lecture, I don't know, there's a lot of books written
Okay.
and stuff like that. What I find when I go to these lectures or seminars here is that it's really quite wonderful in that there's personal experience, like from Freddie Franklin or Danilova was the one I especially remembered hearing them talk about the period of time they performed, like during the war years and all of that kind of stuff. And it was really lets you into an insight not only of their own experience as performers, you know, with no dance floors at that point, and the war going on where you were stuck in one country or another, and that kind of thing, which is something I hadn't realized when seeing them when I saw them as a young person, and I didn't realize that all that kind of thing was going on. And of course, it's fascinating to hear about those periods of time. So, in order not to get caught in anyone's bailiwick, like what I mean by that is I'm going to say this name once and never say it again. Like the Ron Protus or the different sort of eras on that level, but rather get back to Martha's creative periods, and I figured that would be best coming from the works.
Well, I think this is fine and we should do it, but I think there is an immediate problem in the, I'm looking for a decent word and I probably will exaggerate, the decline or the misuse or the abuse, not right, of the technique in the way certain dances are danced. Well, of course, what I'm going to say should probably be a session, but Martha did change the technique when she had an idea for dances. And you do not dance Angels the way you dance Night Journey or Cave of the Heart or other works. And unfortunately, we don't have, I have been saying all along, if you want to revive a work, you've got to find somebody who was in it when Martha was creating it. Well, that hasn't happened. Mm-hmm. There's a big problem, and it's an urgent problem if this in some way is going to continue. It has to be attended to by people who know how to direct them.
Well, that's something interesting that I didn't actually think about, although it was alluded to.
Very definitely.
Very definitely.
I alluded to the most recent period as Martha's bench period. And when Martha was
Sitting.
that's a totally different time a totally different Martha,
Yeah.
a totally different contributor.
And she
From
sat when she
The pre-bench period.
right when she sat and choreographed Angels. She sat from February through August.
Mhm.
That should, it should, but that's
I'm wondering though if we should be thrashing about that, because I mean, I agree with this. Many things that Martha did after a certain time seemed to destroy or diddle with the works. I think maybe I would just like to be talking about what I know and how I remember it, and I'd love to hear what they want to know, rather than try to set up roadblocks for future misinterpretations. I don't think that's
well. I don't think that would be a roadblock for a
Well, I don't think it's gonna
misinterpretation.
be productive.
It's
I think
another
that we
way
should be
of
getting-
choreographing and using her contribution
Well,
with
let's just talk
her
about
not
how we
in
know
it.
it and how we
Yeah,
experience
yeah.
it and what we can add to it. That's, I think, all we can really add.
Right. Well, I was going from I have to go back because I don't know if I can address this directly, although I understand that, certainly that need. And also, to tell you the truth, to make differences in any dance program that you see. I know that one of the things that Mary talked so poetically about was like canticles.
Hmm.
And I found that really extraordinary because it's a piece that I didn't know. And when she talked about the poetry of it, and then also the thing about Martha and death and not wanting to deal with death, and then it became night, and then it became rebirth, and I have some notes on that, but I just thought that was so fascinating that within that she found a way to deal with that as she went along. But I think what's so germane to this is I'm a stage manager, and I came when I came here to New York, I studied in the Graham School, and I had a great time studying with practically all of you. And the thing that I'll never forget is the different take you also had on the technique, and also then the reinforcement is seeing you as performers. In fact, some of you I see still in those parts, and when I think of you, I think of the names of the characters, because that's how strong a theater it was to me, and you are as people. And so what Stuart says is, in a way, it's an inspiration to finally, there's a lot written, but it's so wonderful to hear your own voices at a certain period. To me, that's what would be exciting for this.
Can I interject something?
Mhm.
I think one of the points to go back to what you raised before, we're sort of just coming out of a period where the very existence of this work and this ensemble was in question and could be lost forever or not realized in the same way, which is exactly what you're talking about, is you have questions about how it's being realized. But maybe the whole point for us to talk about this is to go back to some points of authenticity. You all have authentic experiences of Martha. And I think that's the way maybe we can put this material out there and maybe change the course of the future somehow, because we have raised these questions about what it was.
I think another significant thing is that every book that I have ever been exposed to, I might have missed some, that's been written about Martha has never been written by someone from the inside.
No.
Not a single solitary one that I know about. Is there one?
No.
You're talking about a book written about Martha?
Yeah,
By
about
a
the company, about
member.
the work,
40,000
about Martha,
words,
about
but it's
everything.
not
Well,
finished yet.
Gertrude Schurer only did technique.
Yeah, but I think that's
Absolutely, though.
that's very
That is
significant.
one of the
Yeah.
things that I've had in my head, because everybody's writing about Martha by either compending a whole bunch of stuff that
Or
they
they're
get from
critics,
people,
or they're-
somebody theoretical, like that new one that just came out, which is all about her theory. Never heard Martha use the word theory once.
No.
But you're right. There's got to be
But then,
something from us.
you see, we all came at different times,
Yes.
and her work and her approach, both in the technique and in what she was creating, was different than what she went on to create later, and subsequently other dancers arrived. So
But-
our experience would be different.
Right.
Mhm.
But
But
I
some
think
of that
that's
has to do with the subject matter also
Right.
that she was dealing with.
And also, don't you think it's extremely significant and different, the works that Martha built around a central character, which was Martha, or
Yeah,
works
yeah.
that she used
Oh,
for
yes.
the
Oh,
company?
yes.
Well, of course,
And
yes.
I think we got into a discussion about the 50s and the 60s because that was an era
When she was
when Martha
changing.
choreographed a great many pieces on the company. And prior to that, they had all been pieces with Martha
With
as
her.
the central figure, which is a
Initiating
whole other.
the whole
a whole other
idea
thing.
and the movement.
Right.
But
So, but I mean, it's all significant.
But to me, part of what is was wonderful in the early. I mean, she actually did some comedies. I don't think this
yes, Punch of the
age
Judy.
knows that
Nobody
she
said-
was a comedian.
Oh, marvelous comedian.
That's true, is it?
Like
Possibly?
Beatrice-
She, you know,
Like
That's true.
she
Beatrice
was
Lilly.
the B. Lily of,
She was.
and they don't even know who B. Lily is. so,
No,
you
that's
know.
true. You
She
don't.
made lots of comedies. They
Well,
weren't all successful.
no,
Gospel of Eve,
but-
was it?
Gospel of Eve and
Well, so many,
Punch and the
Punch,
Judy.
One more
Judy.
Gaudy
My first.
Night. But do you remember,
No, that
were you
was-
guys
no,
at
that was
Atlanta
all.
when we were
That
doing
was-
circus? And remember that first funny gesture and that the audience laughs and the whole audience said, shh, well, half the audience laughed, the other half said, shh.
They didn't think he was
You're not
supposed to
supposed
laugh.
to.
Nobody cracked as a giggle for the rest of this funny dance.
But you see, in a way, this kind of repartee is what I.
Is what you want
It's
to
spontaneous.
present.
that's what
So,
she
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yes,
why
what
I
you
think
want
if
to
you
do.
have, if the agenda is too tight, I
Yeah,
don't think it's
maybe it can't be too
spontaneous.
tight. Maybe it can't be too tight.
Probably it won't be.
Yeah, not with you all. No, no, no. I know.
There are questions that I'd like to ask. 'Cause I'm never with these guys. I see them, passing. I mean, like, after Martha had two disasters happen to her. She cracked her knee, terrible, and she lost Eric. She comes back and she does Judith
Oh,
and
she-
Triumph of St.
But
John.
she had to do Judith. She had to kill off Eric. Oh, no,
Okay, this is what I wanna hear.
seriously.
Why she did it.
She had to. Why didn't she do Judith earlier? She didn't need to do Judith.
That's kind of what
It was the only way she. No, but it's not funny. It's the only way she could
Two female
survive.
triumphs.
Yeah.
Two female powerhouses.
Right.
One conquered by slicing off this guy's head, okay, and then the next was a much subtler triumph, and I think that's kind of amazing.
And isn't
Well,
it true
yes.
that the original Triumph of St. Joan was 50 minutes as a solo?
Oh, yes.
So,
yes.
A
It
solo.
was.
that
Can
was
you
to say, I
imagine?
can still get this
Well,
thing
look,
going.
can do.
there was a
50
lot of
minutes.
There
pageants.
was a lot of
I saw it.
of set and
But it was
putting
beautiful.
on jewelry and all
crossovers.
Well, that was Judith with the
That was
jewelry.
I'm talking about
It's Judith.
But
St. Joan.
The St.
Oh,
Joan.
St. Joan.
There was a lot of pageantry.
You know, someplace there is a movie of that
a Juilliard.
that the Signal Corps did.
the Triumph of St. Joan or Judith?
No, the Triumph of St. Joan, as a solo.
Why did the Signal Corps do it?
I don't know, but
It
I
was-
was
they
the
did it at
stand-in.
Juilliard.
I spent
No,
2 days
not-
at
not,
Juilliard,
Yes, at Juilliard.
standing in with lights.
Yes.
Well, she
And
did it at.
they
Carnegie
did
She did
this
it with
whole
the-
thing, and
No,
it's lost.
Judith at Carnegie Hall, but
No,
Joan
no,
was
this
at Juilliard.
This Joan
Oh,
was
that's
at
right.
Juilliard,
You're
and
right.
it's
I'm sorry.
lost
It's when we did
somewhere.
Canterbury.
Yep. Yeah.
I know, Claire, everyone's been looking, people have been looking for it.
Which one was,
Claire
was
looking
the
for it.
Symphony
Oh, yeah?
Orchestra?
Crow, yeah.
Which one?
Carnegie
Yeah.
Hall, Judith.
Judith was
With
at
William
Carnegie. I'm
Shue.
sorry.
Was looking
Yeah.
for it. Couldn't find it.
And a tent of Noguchis.
Yeah, but my husband did the first set, by the way,
Ah,
and they don't have it down here.
well, we better put it in.
Better put it in.
Charles Hyman.
But there's
It's
a lot
in
of
Lee's
questions
book.
of this kind that
Yeah.
just need a little more depth on them. I mean, my take is very flat to me.
Right.
And then when Pearl will say something like she had to cut off Eric's head, it definitely deepens it.
Well, look how devastated she was. And we were there when this was building to that, before that European tour, when she hurt her knee and she really couldn't dance, and Eric was flaunting Barbara Bennion around in
Except
front.
that wasn't really true,
It may not have been, but in Martha's eyes, it
In
was
Martha's
true.
eye, because.
In Martha's eyes, it was a stabbing knife.
What
And-
wasn't true?
Barbara
It's
Benyon.
no affair of a generic, Barbara.
No, not a real one, but
It wasn't.
but Martha's
Was it
dragging her
teasing?
poor leg.
Anybody got any proof to the contrary?
No.
Oh, this
No.
is great.
And you know, at the last concert, Bertram said something to Martha that was very nice. He said, "I have a present for you." Martha used to say, "Barbara always dances in the sun." That's a real gift for her, you know, from Martha. Bertram heard Martha say that, and Martha she didn't say it to Martha, she didn't say it to Barbara, she said it to Bertram.
Right.
And Bertram gave that little gift to her, which I think
That's quite a gift.
is vintage Bertram Ross. Yeah.
But you know, you guys are like, you can't get you into a bottle, is what I find.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I love also, that the experiences are so rich. The only point I see being a stage manager is, again, okay, how do we then, I don't want to,
What about by the dance?
well, that's what I was thinking, but then you'd have to come to certain agreements, and then whatever happens, happens. Okay, we start out with X, Y, and Z, but if we go to over there or over there, fine.
Nothing we can do about it, really.
Yeah. Because the audience also may have questions about certain pieces that you can't legislate, that aren't gonna have a list of the 50s and 60s in front of them.
Who is this audience, and where and when do we do it? And how many sessions? I mean, is there anything?
Well, what I was thinking, this is what part of this next step thing is. Madeline is going to put me in touch with the director of the programs here, and I would find out from him what the parameters are. Having gone to a number of these lectures, I know they last about an hour and a half, and basically I know Madeline says we could perhaps do stills of photographs behind us, or, you know, on a screen.
Of the work we're discussing. is
Yes,
that it?
yes. And what I was thinking about, was to have a moderator, and just because it's someone that will keep hopefully the group on track, or the time slot going. And I had first thought of Deborah Jowett, but then looking deeper, I thought of Ellen Graff, who Mary also liked better because she was a part of the company, I believe, in the
Yeah.
50s. And what?
What?
50s.
50. She went to
58.
Israel, 1958.
58.
Yeah.
Right.
She was in the company 1 year.
She was-
when I was in it.
She was the
I-
youngest member in the
Yeah.
company
Right.
She's
in
also
1958.
somewhat modest in demeanor, you know. and
Which
she
I
did-
think is good, because I think you guys are lions and tigers.
She's
Oh my.
You cannot legislate what the audience is going to ask.
Yeah. it's-
And you may have your own reactions to them. And I think it's fair game. I mean, you've done this kind of business a long time. You've educated X amount of dancers. You've taught the technique. You've taught the dances. You've been a part of the creation. Personally, maybe it's a selfish thing. I want to hear what you have to say. Damn it. I mean, I've been thinking about this for 2 years, and I just thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to hear these people speak? You know, I've seen you perform, I've seen you teach, and now I want to hear what you have to say about what it meant to you, and what it meant to be there. And people invest for a long time in this woman. There had to be material there that was, or you work off that material for a long time. I mean, people didn't make a lot of money to do this, if they made any, you know? So, I mean, there had to be something with all of you that kept you riveted somehow. So I want to hear it addressed, and I want to hear you speak.
Well, sometimes I look back and I said, what the hell made me stick there? But something did, you're quite right.
With some kind of fascination.
I could have been a respectable
I have a question.
earning member of
I think
society.
we all, you know, like, we will always talk about the great works, and I'm wondering if there's any value in these events that we're gonna do. Is there any value in talking about any of the failures?
Well, I have a strong feeling about that. The work that personally involved me the deepest, and which was the most intense experience working with Martha, is one of her
Voyage.
major failures,
Right.
which is Theatre for a
Theater
Voyage.
for Voice, yeah.
And Bertram was in it, and he could really speak to it, and Bob was in it. And so it's just Bob, Bertram, me, and Martha, and that went on for a year. She
What was theater for?
Theater for
It
a
was
Voice.
also
Voyage.
called Voyage.
Okay, Voyage.
But
And,
don't you
uh,
think it's important to talk about her
But I
great
mean,
successes
I
before you
think
get
we
into
will.
the
I think that
failures?
will always
Yeah.
be. a
That
piece
would
of
be
it.
way
There's-
down the line.
no,
I would
but
think.
you
there's
know,
another piece you might have been
before-
in it. Shadows. Not Shadows. Shadows I loved. Part real, part dream.
Very
Oh,
much.
that was
That
Yeah.
knocked me
Mary
out.
Matt.
I was never in it, but it just knocked me out.
That was a wonderful
concept.
Mysterious.
concept, beautiful concept.
Concept.
Oh,
And
the dance.
Those pieces that were not quite as spectacularly wonderful fed, you know. You needed to do a piece and try certain qualities and ideas, and maybe that piece wouldn't work, but you found something for the next, to use in the next work, where it bloomed. So it's not that you do a piece and it works or it doesn't work, but it's an ongoing process
Mhm.
that feeds another work. So, you know, I don't know I don't think there's any point in talking about Land Be Bright. But I mean,
Why? I'd love to know
Yeah.
about it.
well,
I never heard of it.
You never heard?
Never heard
So
of it.
We did. Well, we did one performance of it, but we spent 6 months on it, and it was about American holidays. It was, well, I mean, I can talk. Martha put red and white and blue ribbons on her arms, and she was Betsy Ross.
I think she could do a great job. I'm sorry.
And-
We can use that
she
piece
rocked.
today.
She rocked in second from side to side for about 15 or 18 minutes.
And this was not a comedy.
No,
it
we're not finished with it.
Pearl,
And Eric was the Chingachgook, the wooden American Indian that was put outside of barbershops. And it was, and well, yes, but Merce did a Lincoln speech, a Lincoln oratory. And then we were sort of dancing Americana, big jumps and leaps.
but you know, Pearl, there must have been a couple of dances, because when I read the old histories, I had thought for a long time that Angels was the first dance without Martha, but there are at least 2 or 3 that she did before that. Isn't
What
that
are
right?
they?
No, she was in Land Be
Huh?
Bright. I
What
don't
are
know
they?
any.
What about, because you look in the books, and
Yeah,
it will say Martha Graham and Company, and then there's a couple of them that says the Company. And
not
I,
before diversion.
Not before the first. It used to have another name, right?
but that's what the books say. I
Wilderness,
just don't know the answer.
Wilderness
Stare.
Stare.
You guys remember?
Wilderness Stare.
Right.
Was she in Steps in the Street herself?
I think she had a solo before. It
Yeah.
was a series of
That's-
dances.
yeah.
It was a series.
Because
of
that
dances.
was only the 3rd section.
I know that.
Well,
But she wasn't
she-
in that section, though, was she?
No, she
No.
had a solo that opened it.
I see.
Wasn't Chronicle part of that? Or was
I
that-
think it's all
Yeah.
Chronicle.
Chronicle,
It's all
yeah,
Chronicle.
See, and that was her solo.
Well,
You know what? Another wild time was the making of Ardent Song.
Oh,
yeah.
that's my
That was-
second
Right,
priority.
wasn't it?
Hell, that was so.
Could you talk a little bit about Ardent Song? Because I've been trying to look it up, and I don't find a lot on it.
You don't even see it there?
I see it, but I don't find a description like I do of some of the other
What?
pieces.
Because it wasn't done that much
It's
after.
lost.
There were so many reasons why that dance had its fate, and no one of them is the answer. One important thing that Martha found, I'm probably insupportable, was that she never finished it for the premiere. And there was this huge improvisational
Wow.
section.
Yes, there was.
One section she never did choreograph. And
She
one
liked it
day
that way.
Bob said to me, "Have you been seeing Mary, Matt, and Linda on stage in their trio?" I said, "No." He says, "Well, don't miss it. So I went upstairs, and I could not believe it. The three of them were carrying on, and suddenly Linda runs off and says to me, "When is she going to finish this fucking dance?" And goes out on stage. And I wrote it in my journal and forgot it. Gave the journal to Don McDonough, who put it in his book. Linda read it and said, "Where does he get these lies?" I didn't say another word. But she didn't want to remember it, I'm sure, but it was an incredible. So Martha didn't like that. Remember, Gertrude Macy came up the stairs when she was going to cancel and said,
She
"Oh,
sent
Pearl
us
was the hero."
home.
She
We
said,
were
"We're
sent
gonna-"
home at 2 o'clock in the morning. Martha said it's canceled.
Yes.
It will not go on.
And-
Gertrude Macy said it will go on.
Well-
They sent costumes, fabric across the street to the shoemaker and stitched up pieces of things.
Well, she was
and
out of
wrapped us
breath.
up in
Gertrude
those
was saying, "I
things.
heard you're going to cancel dance. You can't do it. All of England is, all London is expecting it. It'd be very most unprofessional." At which point Martha blew up. I've been called many things, but never unprofessional. And then Pearl rescued it. You may not remember. Do you know what
I
she said?
remember it.
Oh.
Do I remember
She
it?
said, "I think we can do it." And then you outlined this plan for the way that Mimi and Bob were the first couple, and they did an improvisation
I
very
don't
slowly.
remember
And the
that.
second couple,
But
and then the
this is-
third followed, and
this
then the
is-
fourth.
Excuse me, it was Mimi and Bert
Bert,
got his
and Bert.
toes caught in Mimi's
Oh, God.
costume
Yeah.
underneath. Mimi got her toes caught in
I
Bert's
got
costume,
my
right?
toes caught in his
Well, this,
costume in the
you can
crowd.
take
And I was
this
trying to
dance and
wiggle
will go on
about.
for at least 2 hours. Oh,
And he
because everybody
goes,
has another story and it's
"Oh."
hilarious.
And one by one, all three couples started to get off.
And not only
the
that,
thing is,
that
all of
whole
that
whole
work-
thing with the couples, that was all
It was all
improvisation.
improv.
And yet it was a
It was
beautiful-
eyeballing. What
Well,
are they doing now? What are they doing now? And doing the same thing, trying to do it.
But
So,
you know, when she
when?
changed the dance when Donnie came into it, and she
Oh,
had a
very
Oh,
focus.
no, well, that was late.
that was
Yeah.
That
years.
was another
when
year.
that was just before we went to on the
Donnie
Asian
replaced
tour.
me. Can you believe that?
I didn't think of that.
Well, of course.
No.
She's
think
doing,
was-
Martha's doing this dance, and all this, I was not in it, and I was running in and out doing other things. She said, can you be in my new work? Can you finish it for me? I said, wait, I don't even know anything about it. She says, well, there are 3 aspects of the moon, and can you do dawn? So it sounded very interesting to me, you know.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, yes, I can do it. Can I see the dance so that I know something about it? No, dear. I'm not finished with it. No, just come tomorrow.
And
So
be
I
gone.
came tomorrow, and I said, whose music is it? She said, Hovannes. And she said, Helen will play it for you. And she said, here is a cape. And Helen will play the music, and she walked out of the room. I said, Martha, what should I do? She said, just do something. So the cape weighed about 10 pounds. It was one of the old ones from Seraphic. And I thought, well, this is... And Helen plays. And this is the way it sounded. Boom, 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 da-da. And I thought, how do I make dawn out of this? And so I thought, well, there's no music, there's no sound. I better do something, some movement with sound. And so I did skips and with my arms going in a circle and to fill in the sound. And I just didn't find any way to use the cape. And Martha came the next day and she said, fine. Well, but I only had one movement. I didn't have a dance. And then she got the men in one night with a sari, and they wrapped me up and carried me in and put me down. After that, I didn't know what to do. And this is the way we went to London. And
Well, see, I think this is why Martha dropped the dance. I mean, she had not done it the way she wanted to. And I think
well, you know
But
what
we
she
did
did in
do
the
it on the
theater?
tour.
No,
They
We
put
did
that
do it on the
sari
Asian
under
tour,
my leg,
because I did her part.
tied it to a batten, and they lifted the batten, and I was hanging over the stage. Now,
so beautiful.
you have to be a genius to figure this out. If you don't have a lot of movement is Dawn. She's gonna do it theatrically, and I was flying from the baton. It was really
I
remarkable.
had people in India tell me how it's changed everything they're going to choreograph.
Also, everyone who ever did the shell dance became pregnant.
Yes.
That's absolutely true. Do you remember that? Everyone became pregnant and had to.
Wish I'd tried it. The thing is,
It did change.
why did she drop this dance? There's a lot of reasons. I think part of it you just heard, in the sense that it was out of her control.
Oh.
There was another time when she was listening to the men's dance where we do those jumps,
Yeah.
and she said, "This music, it just drives me and drives me." It was so rhythmic that she couldn't escape. That's an earlier section. So, okay, and then I think she nailed it, coffin shut, when she took the whole opening of Arden Song and made it into Acts of Light. The same
Yeah,
whole
that's-
thing. And so she just used it.
Well,
So,
she didn't make it into
see-
the Acts of Light. That was much before Acts of Light.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
she took
she
that
took-
movement
Oh.
and
She
put it
took the
borrowed it from
beginning
Arden Song.
because
Yeah, but Acts of Light had. Oh, I see. She
Yeah,
put it
she
in
used
Acts
it.
of Light. Oh,
She just took
I
it
thought
and
you-
made it into
she
another
stole
dance
from
and
Rita.
made it
Oh,
and
she
made it
always did
into
that.
a
Yes, I know,
glorious
but this
dance.
was
Made
pretty
it.
I mean,
obvious.
Acts of Light's beautiful, but every time I see it, I think of Arden's song when
Yeah.
I see them at the beginning.
Well, that's
Hear Bertram
That's
saying, "Oi."
fascinating.
but the reason she went back to Arden Song for us to take it was to give Donnie a special role.
But Donnie,
She no, I did your
You did
part.
my-
You taught it to me.
Right.
That's right. You didn't go.
And
there.
I
Donnie
didn't
had
go
a
to that.
special
Neither did I.
role.
he had something else.
Yeah.
She said, "Darling, you and I are going to Harrods, and we're going to find some material for
You
a
guys ready
costume."
again? Okay, we can talk.
So we went to Harrods, and we found a piece of chiffon that was white and turned into green. And I thought, well, all right, this might work. And we made a costume all night for 2 nights in a row. We were up sewing cotton, and that was the opening in London. And the very next week we went to Holland. I said, "Martha, can you give me an hour for some choreography? I just don't know what to." Once the men put me down, I have no choreography. I think I'd like to make another costume. And we go to find white silk for white pants in Amsterdam, with a choli and gold leaves coming through the crotch. So that was the second performance of Arden Song. And then we get to New York, and we still don't have choreography, but we had another costume. So, so how would you know which dance you were lighting if it changed? If it changed color.
I want to have my hands on the controls, I
What
guess.
I think, I mean, if somebody said, "Why did you stick with Martha?" For the same reason that every time I see a dance, it's a good dance or a bad dance, depending upon whether I get some glimpse into the mind of the choreographer. And with Martha, you got these more than glimpses, you these startling insights. I don't know what else can be. If you read a book for that reason, or a poem, or anything you do, it's got to reveal something. And hanging around Martha was an adventure. Let's
Yeah.
face it.
Right, you didn't have to be on stage.
Huh?
That's
She
right.
was
You
acting
know,
all the
yeah.
time anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
so it was a real.
Yeah, it was
Drama.
an
Some of the
adventure.
studio
Couldn't
experiences
pass
were
up an
the
adventure like
most
that.
memorable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
You know.
I think her
When she-
images, the way she spoke in images, really could
Yeah.
And
just
also,
find their mark.
like
She was an
in-
actress.
when
Really.
she was. Remember when she was doing the interlude before what was originally supposed to be Death and Canticle? And she sat on the Noguchi bench, and you know how she would let her eyes roll back
Yeah, around.
in her head, and she got up, and she did the most phenomenally interesting, impossible to duplicate movement, and we were all just like this, and we were supposed to duplicate it, which was impossible. We got the essences of it, you know, but it was just astonishing.
Well, her sense of theater, though, was amazing. Even in a piece that was in Arden Song that was rocking up and down and in and out, the idea of it wasn't comfortable to hang from the baton over the stage and not know what was going to happen. But the idea of the whole spread of light at the end of these 3 moons at night is an amazing story. And the depth with which she plummeted her dramatic roles when she was dancing was phenomenal to see and to watch.
Mm.
Her performances were
Right,
were remarkable,
right.
just
In
remarkable.
In the 54 tour, Matt and I were not in Deaths and Entrances.
Oh yeah,
We used to go into the house every night
to watch her.
to watch Martha, and the Mad Dance.
Yeah.
Every time
I used to watch that as often as I
it was
could.
as though you were seeing it for the first time, and it was so consuming, all compelling, so incredible
Yeah.
to see. You were on the edge of your seat all the time. We watched it night after night after night.
Well, you know, in her little book,
You were in that, though, weren't you?
Yeah.
You carried on.
she
did
said
that.
how
One
the
of the
first when
children.
she was first on the stage, she knew she could hold the stage. She knew that she was
That's an understatement.
something she felt confident of early in her life.
Well, no, she always said if a lighting designer or a stage manager would
Yeah.
say, Martha, where is center? She'd say, where I am, there. Even
that's
if
the most-
even if I'm at the end, where I am is center.
Well, yeah, and that was done almost in opposition to Doris, who always spoke of the center of the stage as the most important part. She said the center, the most important part is wherever I happen to be. And I understood.
But you see that it actually is very interesting now that you say that. In the 2 versions of how they choreographed.
Of what?
2 versions of how Doris
how they
choreographed
choreographed.
and Martha.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Doris has a book and gave studies in you choreograph a diagonal, you choreograph a circle, you choreograph a straight line. And when I heard that, having already spent 1 summer with Martha, I mean, whatever you feel in the movement will take you where you need to go. It's the drama of the person that's going to create either the diagonal or the circle or the line, not that you begin with an abstract
Well,
form on the
Doris's
stage
way is
and
different.
then make a dance out of that. And that's why I went to Martha and not to Doris. Really, because both of them came. I was about 16 or 17 in Chicago. Northwestern University gave a series and brought Doris and Charles and Martha. And they all gave master classes. And I took them, and Doris offered me a place in the company if I went to New York. And at that point, I didn't make the decision then. It was only afterwards. I didn't know why I went to study with Martha, June course. But later I found out exactly why. That was the difference.
You know, there was a quote that you did, Pearl, that I've written down, which I like. It's just because I've been looking in the archives, because it's from Deep Song, Stodell's book, and if I can quote you, "The further back I step, the larger and more important looms the worth of the Graham contribution to dance technique, dance theater, the concept of theater, of human behavior, of life itself, comparable to Shakespeare in dramaturgy and to Picasso in painting."
who said that? Oh, Pearl said that. Good for you, Pearl.
And I thought
But
that
you
was
want to
very-
hear another interesting thing. Back in about the 70s, if you remember, 77, there was this whole big thing, which is still there, about not needing to act and emote. And in the new Tony Bentley book, I love her writing, by the way, she, you know, her new book about Sisters of Salome, when she said we were told not to get Giselle-itis, and you know, and yeah, and Merce Cunningham with his abstractions, and Lucinda Childs, and a lot of things like minimalism, so-called. And one day I was talking to a South American choreographer, and he was showing some stuff, and I said, it was very dramatic, and people were having passionate encounters with each other of different kinds. I just said to him, do you ever think about doing a dance that doesn't deal directly with emotions? And he said, no, we think dance should deal with emotions. And I suddenly began to think, maybe this is right, because I was on the defensive. You know, I've been working with Martha, and I love that whole emotional bath that I was taking every time I'm on stage. And then it became very, very out.
Yeah.
Now it's come back, and I don't think you can. I like them both. I
don't
couldn't
see
dance
where
with
has it
Nikolai
come
because.
back? Where has it come
Yeah.
back?
I
Huh?
wouldn't.
Where
I
has it
wouldn't
come back?
describe
Oh, it's
Martha's
young
work as-
choreographers.
as an emotional
Yeah, it
bath
is
either.
coming back.
Absolutely. I mean, there's still not many good dancers, and never were.
Yeah.
But people that I see, like Sean Curran, who was a student of mine for a little while, he's trying to do that. He's looking for his own way. He doesn't want to imitate, but he's looking for, a lot of them are looking for ways to get down into the soul somehow. Not
Well,
that you should
They need
do one or the other.
They need a little spiritual food. They come for that.
Yeah, spiritual.
And Martha's technique does provide a possibility for it. But then a lot of them are, they're very acrobatic at this point.
Well,
You
think
know,
of all
well,
of
they're
Yeah.
you know, it is a
pale
computer
imitations of
age.
Martha
That's a
back in
whole
the
other
40s.
subject.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sort of fascinated. We were talking the other day about the nature of collaboration, and it's all sort of been very enlightening to me to discover how much each of you as performers brought into
That's
the
a real
process of
important
Martha.
subject. It
That
almost
was
could be a
unknown
separate
to me
subject.
really until very recently.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, in terms of how you thought about how you participated in the work, certainly you had to have an understanding of what Martha's whole thing was, and you had to filter yourself through that. If you could speak a little bit about how you thought about it or felt about it, that would be
It's a
fascinating.
long lecture. It's a long and very interesting topic.
Very deep subject.
And the older she got, when she couldn't rely on her
Physical
on her own body to initiate the movement, and Mary spoke about angels. Martha had an uncanny way of looking at a dancer, working with a dancer, and finding what in them she could use for her own work. She knew before we knew what we were capable of. She had an uncanny way of pinpointing qualities. And actually in Angels, we did our own choreography. Martha sat like this from February through August. And we warmed up 5 times.
But an important thing is,
Yeah.
you're talking about a soloist.
Yeah, well, they're all
And-
solos.
Angels are not all soloists.
Well,
Did
the
you
three.
talk about what?
No.
I didn't hear.
Solos.
Oh.
But you see, well, you started out, maybe you didn't always start out as a soloist. We started out as choreographers. So I think we had a totally different exposure and
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
because we were there when Martha choreographed on us. We didn't experience what you're talking about until much later. Isn't that true, Mimi?
Well, I remember.
That's what I meant before, when we all came at different periods. So the
Yeah.
experience is going to be different.
Right. But that's
But
also
if-
what's
That's the
fascinating
beautiful
too.
part of this. I mean, if we put an apple on the table, every one of you is going to describe the apple in a different way, and it's all valid. And I think that has to be like, that's
Well,
where we're
except
still
no.
when we discuss it, we'll find out it's not just an apple. It's an
No.
apple and a banana and a rutabaga. It's all different, really different.
Also, when people came at different times, Martha was different. Her thinking and her ideas were different. Her technique had changed. So we really come with different.
But getting back to
Experiences.
what Mary and you see, you had already been in the company.
Yes.
So that, and she knew you, and you knew, and then when somebody's newer, she takes a little time, and so they are in the chorus until she sees.
Right.
And then you had to do your own thing.
Right.
I mean, that's
And in
happened.
Canticle, it was a fluke that I did. I was a choreographer and a soloist. It's because
Right.
Natanya abruptly left. I don't know the reason, but
She had a brain tumor.
But you know,
But that wasn't till later that they discovered.
was
it.
later.
They
Oh.
no, it was.
Well.
But she left at that time, so
maybe she
I was
pregnant.
prematurely
Maybe.
put into
Yeah.
a double situation.
you know, there were instances where Martha would give me a movement, but I remember one specific instance when she drew it from me, and it was Mad Tom. And she said, Mad Tom is is naked on the mountain. You will be
This
wearing
is
very
in
little,
Lear.
and you're cold. So I kind of got cold. And then she said, come across the jump. I did it, and she said, well, can you vibrate your legs? What's that mean? I don't know what it means, but I tried something. It turned out to be the first bicycle. And she said, oh, that's good. So that she just, it was an accumulative process.
It
The
sounds
image-
like she's carving.
What?
She's carving.
Yeah.
Yes, it was
Sounds
like a
like on a
sculptural
du-
thing.
like
we're
on
we're
a bike.
adding a bit and taking a little off and trying it again and looking at it and finally getting it. Now, sure, you could say I made it up, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I responded.
No, what? But that's a dramatic role. That's Lear. Here we're working with Angels, an abstract movement piece, and we warmed up, and she's still sitting like this. Natanya was this center figure, and this poor dancer was standing there for 3 and 4 hours, and Martha still, and we warmed up on the side, and got cold and warmed up. Now I finally got myself in a high second, and I thought, what would happen if I took a contraction? And Martha said,
Saw it.
do that across the stage. And that's how we got that movement. And then when Natanya and I had a duet and the company was, she said, I have an idea. I'm going to divide the stage. I'll put the couples in the center. Pearl go over there, Natanya go over here. Now, Martha knew Natanya was Louis Horst's assistant. I had taken 2 years with Louis Horst. She had seen my choreography for Louis' class for 2 seasons. I was performing it. So she knew that we knew enough about ourselves to choreograph. She wouldn't throw this on a young novice. And she said, well, you do the first part, and no, she said, you devise a movement, and Natanya, you devise a movement. Come back the next day. She said, Pearl, stop, hold it. Natanya, let me see what you did. Hold it. Pearl, continue what you did. And that's how we choreographed Angels.
And are you saying that that the duet, which was originally Sasha and Natanya, they did that? Martha
No,
didn't do
Martha
that?
did that.
I thought
Martha
so.
did that, and this crown had been seen before for other works. No, Martha did that marvelous adagio duet between the center girl and the man on the floor.
Why did she change it when we went to Europe? In other words, I
don't
didn't
know.
see you in Connecticut,
Uh-huh.
but that was a different than. Don't you remember what she put us in?
Its costumes were changed all the
Yeah,
time.
but so was the choreography because we
For
did,
you.
for the chorus because
the chorus, the
we
three-
we did a
yeah.
back fall right in the very beginning. Why? How? I'll never know.
I remember that very well. That was the
Yeah.
Paris opening.
Yes.
Everybody was standing facing upstage except somebody in the middle, dum, bum, bum, and we did a back fall.
Right.
Everyone. Well, because she
did-
kept changing the move.
Yeah, and
And
I
dance
just
for years.
wondered because she's got such a good review with it.
Well, I
In
remember
this
that.
version, I believe Helen stood on her head, didn't she?
Oh, I
But no,
never
they
saw
stood
that.
on their head in Connecticut.
That's
The
prior
three
to
girls.
Europe.
Prior.
Well, it was handstand, right? Wasn't it?
Helen
No,
stood
they
on her
told
head. she
it
told me.
read in the review headstand, but I didn't see it.
Helen
was
said
a
she
hand.
stood on her head.
No, that
You
was
can call it.
acrobats. She stood on her head.
I remember, well, there were so many situations. Once, rehearsal was about to start, and Linda is lying on the ground, and I'm lying beside her, and I suddenly, for no reason at all, pitched my legs up into the air so that my head was this way, my body was up, and I was holding myself there.
And Martha said, do it.
Well, no, Martha wasn't in the room.
Oh.
And then Linda said, when you see Martha coming and
Show
do
it
that.
to her.
And so I saw her coming in, and I got into that position. She said, "Oh, that's interesting," and that's the end of that. You know, she didn't always grab what.
No.
You know, she'll like this, but she
But
didn't.
this is your answer now. you
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Also, she would get to, 3/4 of the way through a piece and then couldn't finish it. And Bob Cohen and I, and whoever else was on the stage at the time, went into the small studio and finished the dance. Because we had to do it tomorrow.
Right.
But you see, if you've been working with her long enough and you have watched her perform for 10 years, you know what she would not do. and we had the technique.
It's a pity not
But
to get
even-
Bertram in on this, because he did this for so many years. And he had more patience than I. I couldn't last a 5-hour rehearsal or 6 hours and still give her 100% attention. He could.
But did you see his own dance once?
What?
Did you see the dance he did at DTW?
Bertram?
Yeah. When he was reading a newspaper, then he put the newspaper down, he'd go lift up a dancer and put it down, go back to his newspaper.
No.
Oh, I never saw that. Sounds good.
Yeah, but he could.
He did, what was that piece, Richard? Theater piece, I think it was
I think
called.
that's right.
He talked about theater piece, and
Like to get that into
he
the
was
ensemble.
like a king, you know, he had these roles.
I
And
heard
it,
about that.
it was like elastic, the robe was like elastic, and at the end of the piece, the elastic was boom,
Snap.
and he was in a crumple. But then his replacement, like the crown didn't fit, and it was a wonderful piece. And I just thought,
No, that.
he won't need to go to a psychiatrist.
What's this called?
Theater piece. It was done at DTW, and I remember going to see it, and I thought, this is so wonderful. And he talked about this when we went to see,
Uh-huh.
so just so you know. But let
So
me,
like we have two big themes here. One is how we work with her, which is so unique and individual, but it's a
It
theme.
certainly is,
The other
because-
is specific dances. I
Right.
don't know whether,
Right.
you know, how you
And-
can
and-
organize a lecture so we don't roam too much.
right, but
Even in, I mean, say as late as when she made Circe, Martha choreographed that. She didn't.
Circe.
Oh, I
Yeah,
remember
she
that.
didn't.
Yeah.
She didn't say do something
Never to
and
me.
leave the room.
Maybe
She
she didn't trust me enough.
choreographed
She
that.
never said that to me. She would give me an idea, or she would give
Well,
me
I
an
was
image,
just going to
but
say
never
that
do this
you know
or
it
do
wasn't
anything.
it wasn't always that way that Martha would say do something.
Well,
you
I
know.
remember once Mark Ryder, Sasha and I were sitting on the ground during rehearsal at 66th Avenue when we were watching her. And she did a move which if I get on my feet and do it, I'll do it so badly, I'll just describe it. It was a sort of a pensive step. Her head was turned and the arm came past her face. And Mark turned, Sasha said, "That's for Pearl." He said, "That's for Pearl." And the next thing, she turns up and says, "Pearl," and we go. So she could get into the skin, as Pearl was describing so much.
She had an uncanny way. She, you know, if you took a class with her, she would know where you were going in the theater, what she could do with you,
Yeah.
where she could use you, if there was some kind of talent.
I remember her saying things like, always steal from the best, and things like, I'm a snake or I'm a witch. She would always say that about herself.
She
Yeah.
got more movement out of herself. If she-
Right, right.
I
It was
remember May
amazing.
O'Donnell telling me that.
But trying to
Way
get back
back.
to pieces,
May
I
used to say,
don't
"Be
think we
careful."
have to decide those pieces now, but I'm gonna read to you just so you know what other people have said who aren't here. And I wanna read you Helen's, letter, which she talks about some
I have
of the
about
pieces.
another 15 minutes.
Okay, well, so let me get this, because I think this is important. Thank you for your communication. I will not be able to attend the planning meeting June 21st. I'm so sorry. I'm not clear whether you are interested in my thoughts in works only of the 50s and 60s. I do think some of the pieces of the 40s need attention too.
Yeah.
But assuming that we are talking only of the 50s and 60s, I feel that I could help. It's hard to read it because it's. I could speak positively with Canticles, Seraphic Dialogue, Clytemnestra, Acrobats, Phaedra, Secular Games, Legend of Judith, and Cortesia
Who is this?
of
Helen?
Eagles.
Helen.
Helen. I wish you the best of luck in your efforts and regret very much having to miss the preliminary meeting. But then she called by phone and she said she also threw in Ardent Song, which is very cute. Linda said this was her homework. She said, "Okay, I can't be there. Here's the pieces. You know, very matter of fact. Canticle, Ardent Song, Clytemnestra, Embattled Garden, Episodes, Phaedra, Seraphic Dialogue, and Acrobats of God." Yeah. that's
Helen
what she-
didn't have acrobats down?
She did.
Oh,
Did I
I
not
guess I
read
didn't
that?
hear it.
Acrobats.
Oh,
Right,
sorry,
acrobats.
didn't hear.
And Legend of Judith. right, that's what I said. I'll give you copies of who said what. But I think the summer, here's what I'd like to do. I would like to show this video to Ellen Graff, and I'd like to give a copy to Helen.
But Helen mentioned it, and I think we just didn't, well, because these people were not there. When I came, I had to learn Letter to the World. It was choreographed the end of 38, 39. One of the great American documents. And I had to learn American document. One really an amazing piece. And it's, of course, when they tried to, they tried to revive it, and Ron had a lot to do with it. You can take this out if you like, but I don't care. It was a disaster. It was a disaster. Everything worked against it. But it is a piece.
I thought she choreographed it.
Well,
It was terrible.
It was terrible. But, well, they had no music, you know.
Right, because Ray, yeah.
Ray, well, the
yeah.
original score
didn't-
was, you know, old Ray Green, who was May O'Donnell's husband, used to play for classes, and it would be bum, 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 ba-dum, bum. And that was the way the music almost sounded like in American documents. So Martha did such brilliant things with it, and the words were so magnificent that you weren't aware of how impoverished the music was. But then when they had to revive it and they called Ray back and Martha heard it, it was just out of the question. So she wanted Aaron Copland to write. And Aaron said, Martha, I haven't written anything in a year. I'm only conducting even Haydn. I can't write anymore. I'm finished. And I'm sorry, but I can't do it. Now that is a sweet and honest, lovely man. So so Martha said, well, can you suggest? He said, well, try Leonard Bernstein. And so Martha sent Leonard Bernstein the text and didn't hear for busy. And they announced it in the city, for the city center season. And Martha's waiting to hear a little bit of music, and there's no music. And finally, Ron called and said, please, can you come and let us hear something? And so Martha called the company. It was a Sunday, and he came, and he played about 4 minutes, and then sat down and said to Martha, I don't like your text. You've got too many words. Now, we've got the Declaration of Independence here, and we have got, a remarkable text that Martha is using in a magnificent way. And so that was the end of that. So here they're announced. And so they started to look for music. And they ended up with that young man who wrote a marvelous symphony, his first one, on AIDS, Coriolanus. No, not Coriolanus. His, it was a concerto for either cello or oboe or something. And they took this innocent piece of music and tried to put it onto Letter to the World. It was awful. It was just terrible.
Document.
It just did not work. And she had Baryshnikov and did not know what to do for him. It was disaster. Then they thought that Gregory Peck would save this if he spoke the words, and he might have. But 2 weeks before, he said, I can't come, and I'm sending you my daughter. Poor child couldn't get on the stage. Just didn't know how to walk. So it was a disaster. And unfortunately so, because here is a great idea, and it was a great work, and it just needs a decent score. No, they did it, and
Well,
it
they
was
did it.
They had to teach a
I
class
saw they did
no,
it
no,
every
no.
one.
long ago.
what,
Yeah.
1940s?
But I
Do I
saw
need to
that.
edit anything?
It
for
was a
you out
marvelous
of this
piece.
tape?
Wonderful.
It was a marvelous
Yeah.
piece.
Let
But she
history hate me.
changed it.
Okay.
Well,
I
no,
love
well
you.
then, it was
Um,
awful. It was
there is
just
something I wanted to
terrible.
tell these
What it
guys.
could
It
be.
was,
could
ter-
be
and
Okay.
you know, Agnes DeMille came in a wheelchair because she adored this piece,
Well, all right,
and
maybe I'll
sat
reach them.
there
It
and
has to do with
cried.
I started
She,
something.
and I came out. She said, "How did this
with
happen?
Yeah.
two
How
people,
could this
Irving
happen?"
Burton
I know.
and
has to
Helen
leave. He wants
McGee.
to tell
Can I
you
tell you
something.
this?
Yeah,
Uh,
tell.
You know, I've been working on a book for 12 years. Martha told me to
Only
work on
12.
it. But and it's very personal. And I discovered that there are certain places. I'll give you an example. When Irving Burton auditioned for Martha, we taught him the party scene, and he came in, and we did it together. And Martha took him in a room and talked to him, and came back and said, "He's a very fine dancer, but his specialness draws the eye." I told this to Irving, because I've been recently working with him, and he told me the story of what Martha told him in the room, and it's a very fascinating
What did she
speech.
say?
And I said, "Would you write that down? I'd love to put it right in my book with your name." And so he said, "Fine." Same thing happened. I was writing to Helen just to talk about sections, what happened here, what happened there. We were talking about the Helen Keller incident.
Oh yeah.
And she then told me this whole place. I have the picture of her standing on Bob's thighs. If you remember that picture,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
like this.
Yeah.
And she said, Helen came over and touched my foot on Bob's thigh, and feeling me there alarmed her. But then she did something else, and I wrote her recently and said, "Can I include that?" And she said, "Yes." I told her that I want to do this with as many people as I can. When a specific thing comes and another person remembers the incident and has a different view of it, "Oh, would I love to get you guys?" And she said, "It's a bottomless pit." And I said, "Yes, it's a bottomless treasure house, not a pit." And so this is what I want to do. And I'm telling the four of you now because you're all here. And I hope if you say yes, fine. If you say no, I love you. Okay? But if you have anything to add, I'll send
Helen
sections
Keller.
to you.
Helen
Okay?
Keller was in the studio, and Martha said to me, "Jump," and Martha put Helen Keller's hand on my foot while I was jumping, and Helen Keller said, "It's as light as a thought."
As a what? The
thought.
Do you know that another thing Helen said?
Beautiful.
That Helen Keller
Keller.
touched your hair and liked it because it was so springy. Do you
Mine.
remember that?
She touched mine.
Yes, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Oh,
Your
oh,
hair.
yeah.
And she loved the
Yeah,
feel
she
of your
loved
springy
springy.
hair.
Love it.
So
I love that term.
I really want this stuff if you'll give it to me.
Yeah.
And I've even made an arrangement whereby the
That's
number of words that you
important to
contribute
say.
to the book will be a percentage of the royalty if there ever is one. And you can edit it too.
Stuart, has it really been 12 years?
Oh,
Or are you
Yes.
exaggerating?
No. I had been
It's-
called to teach
can
at the
take
Graham
longer.
School by Armgard von
I just
Barleben.
wondered
And I
what
was
we had.
waiting at the door to leave, and there was Martha waiting for her limo. And I said hello to her, and she was sort of vague, hello. And I said, teaching here has reminded me of so many things. And then she stopped being vague, and she looked at me, and she said, what things? I said, memories of all the years with you. And she said, write it down.
Yeah, she
I
said
couldn't have
that.
been more surprised. I said, well, yes, I thought of that, but I never remember which year's thing happened. She said, doesn't matter. Write it down. Well, she wants me to write down those big fights we had,
Oh,
which
yeah.
were really wonderful. I mean, I was never mad at her the next day. It wasn't like I, went to Europe and sent her a
This is a
I mean,
good time to launch your book from this little.
But the whole thing is, I do want it. It will turn my book into not just another book. It will be a deeper little thing. And if you guys want to give it to me, that would be great. And if you don't, as I said.
It'll be a fabulous work of fiction.
Have a good class.
Okay, nice to
Thanks,
see you.
Stuart.
Thank you
We'll
very
talk.
much, Max.
Mwah.
Kisses. Thank you.
Oh, great.
So this is scheduled for when and how
Okay.
and what,
What,
where.
the next step for me is that I will get with Madeline and get to the program director. I'd like permission to talk to Ellen Graff further about being a moderator for this. And then I'm gonna let it go for the summer, and I'm gonna come back to you with what I know, or I can let you know as I know it.
You know.
I
Could
think.
we also talk, I mean, there could be a whole range of how Martha brought in her other artistic collaborators, the Noguchis, the lighting
Well, we don't know
designers.
We
that.
don't know about
We
that.
don't know that.
Yeah.
She never shared that with us. He appeared.
Yeah.
So you were never really brought in
No.
before she brought it into the studio,
No.
no one was into her process.
No. And sometimes Noguchi would do a piece and we never saw him.
All right.
He would just give us the most uncomfortable thing to sit or stand on. But, seraphic dialogue, you're standing on a rung in
Yeah.
bare feet for a very long time. Or in Appalachian Spring, there's the
That
seat.
bench.
The seat is about 4 inches, and you don't
On
sit
a
on it,
slant.
but it's on a slant. So you're on your knees all the time until you have to get up and jump. It's,
But it is some of the most
That's why-
gorgeous stage pieces ever made.
without a doubt.
Keeps you on your toes.
I'll tell you,
But I don't
drama
think
is
it would have
drama.
impaired the wall there had he made a seat so that we could sit.
Well, we want to work on it more and then come to you with what the format can be with the library, and it's just it's a beginning, and then I think we just have to let it fly, because I think if we now I see that if I try to put it in a bottle, it would be the wrong thing to do, because the way you talk among yourselves also is really great to understand the experience of it. You see, today, I don't think we have the kind of creative process that happens, that you all experience. I mean, I think I've read about it as far as Lester Horton, and when I talked to Carmen de Lavalla, I understand that. But in a way, you have the same kind of experience, and it's a fascinating theater, and perhaps a more creative one than a lot of people get to deal with. So,
Oh, without a doubt.
It's a unique treasure.
yeah. So I mean, I hope you feel good about this, because I feel it's great.
Did
Well-
you call Paul at all?
I didn't call Paul because I wanted to hear what the pieces were.
Right.
I think
But
if
he was only in.
No, but well, that's what I.
And-
I
Clyde
will-
Nestor
if we're
gets-
doing Clyde and
Nice
Nestor, I was
journey.
thinking of
That-
calling
that's
you.
what I
we'd
was
have
thinking.
to have Paul.
And
Yeah.
Night Journey, he was wonderful.
Right.
But he was an
But
actor.
he was
He was an
a,
actor.
you know,
He was a
It was
place.
after-
Well,
Yeah. Oh, I mean,
Right.
you should have seen. Did you see Mark Ryder in Night Journey?
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Ah, it's,
but do you remember the to-do we had with Mark?
I don't remember. No. I
You
don't
don't?
know. No.
He was gonna be realistic
Oh, really?
and
What
be
happened?
blind.
Oh, really?
And don't you, oh, maybe
No, I
you
don't
weren't
remember.
there.
No. And he was really blind.
He was
Closed
going
his
to
eyes.
be, and there we were. This was in the, that didn't last long, I
know.
tell you that. I'm not very aggressive, but I was at that moment.
I think that's what
Except
Martha could
that
get out of people.
He had such attention. Here, I mean, the whole tragedy of Oedipus is in his hands, and he didn't want to say it. And Mark Ryder, when Martha choreographed it on Mark Ryder, he had such tension before he moved and before a leg went out. It was just remarkable. Then the next thing I saw in a video is Paul Taylor swinging around all over the place and throwing his legs around, and Paul Taylor. And that wasn't the role at all. I mean, he moved through the cape around, and it was all of his big circular swishy
Which was
movement.
very suitable for Aegisthus.
Right.
That's right. For
Yeah.
just this
Perfect.
is perfect.
Perfect.
Absolutely
See how
perfect.
Martha
Exactly what it should have
Martha
been.
looks at a dancer and knows perfect.
Yeah.
But wrong well Martha,
I
that was
understand.
later.
Yes,
you
I
know.
understand. But I
But
think
the problem we have is that we have no video of Mark Ryder, and we do have one of Paul Taylor, and all those poor little Tiresias figures are learning that, and the piece has gone to hell dramatically.